Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Som TV podcast. My name is Jason Wise. On today's show, I am speaking with my friend Tessa Martinelli. She is of the famous Sonoma family going back to the mid-1800s. There aren't a lot of families in America that go back as many generations as the Martinelli family does with wine. They have been making wine through Prohibition, through the World Wars. They have members of their family who have been arrested for bootlegging, all sorts of crazy stuff. And guess what? They are the subject of our upcoming episode of Verticals. It's a supersized episode that was one of my favorite things I've ever filmed. It features a 1936 Zinfandel, which is, besides its age, was one of the best red wines I've ever tasted. I could not believe how old it was and how intact it was. So Tessa and I are going to talk about Zin. In preparation for the Verticals episode, regardless of how you feel about Zin, some people love it, some people think it's too big. It comes in a lot of different styles. So Tessa and I are going to rank our 3 favorite Zinfandels that are not made by Martinelli. And then we're going to talk a little bit about her family history and everything. And don't forget to tune into her Verticals episode on March 25th. Right now, you can watch the Hobbs episode. Paul Hobbs goes all around the world in this in the second episode of the season. Obviously, Maya Kamas is up, and we have several on the way. So please stick with us, somtv.com. And remember, our new season of Blind Tasting Sessions is airing every other week right now on Som TV. All right, my friends, without further ado, Tessa Martinelli. All right, I am on with Tessa Martinelli. Tessa, how are you?
I'm good. Thanks.
Good. Little break from being locked in a house with your 2 children.
Yes.
To do a podcast.
Yes, they're at my mom's and I'm home rather than at the winery because it's loud there too.
Yeah, well, a winery should be. That means you guys are working and making what you should be making.
Hey, we're essential, so we're rocking and rolling.
As somebody who partakes in wine often, you are essential. It's really interesting when you think about the Martinelli family. So you're obviously in our second season of Verticals, which is a huge honor for me. I am so excited by the lack of people who know your story. It makes me so excited to be one of the people who gets to tell it. I just can't believe no one has done this before, and I cannot believe it's me that got to do it.
I love it. Well, the feeling's mutual because we could not believe when you reached out to us to do it. And we are so honored and just excited to have you guys, because you're just so good at what you do, have you guys telling our story. So we cannot wait.
Well, everybody listening needs to watch this Verticals episode. But part of the reason I was so drawn to it is, anybody who watches the things I direct or listens to the podcast knows I'm obsessed with history. And you guys are one of the few families in California that really can say you have some. It's like you're 5th generation Californian?
Yep, I'm 5th generation.
Yeah, I think my family's been here for about an hour and 40 minutes.
Comparatively, it is. It's a long time. It really is a long time. It's cool, and for everybody in my family kind of started having children on the younger side also. So it's like I had my great-grandparents for most of my life. Our generations are probably shorter than a lot of families, but it's super special.
Yeah, you get that in the episode, how close your family is. But I think the thing that is really, really, really interesting to me is that everybody says, winemakers are farmers. They're just farmers. They're simple. But you guys really walk the walk. I will say, like, meeting your grandfather and your grandmother, these are 2 people who literally would rather be on a tractor and rather be working in a vineyard than be in a sales room or be on a plane. Or
100%.
It's just, but it's, you say that stuff nowadays and you just feel like, oh yeah, well, they expect that, but it's not true. There's a lot of winemakers and vignerons that spend half their time selling.
Traveling, selling, the business side of it. Yeah, and my my grandfather was very involved in that side, until probably 6 to 8 years ago, I want to say. He finally started stepping back and, in all honesty, he just does not want to deal with any of the paperwork. He doesn't want to be in an office. His happy place is being on a tractor, farming, planting, developing vineyards. And now, he's built this legacy, this company, and is able to leave it to other people to do the paperwork side of it. So yeah, in that respect, this is definitely the happiest he's been. He's outside on his tractor as often as he can be, which is basically 6.5 days a week still, I'd say, at almost 82 years old.
Well, so you guys, your last name might as well be Zinfandel. It's seriously, it's you guys are one of the most associated with the grape of anybody. And I think, it goes back to the literal foundation of Sonoma and Napa in its modern era as a farming community. You guys have been growing Zinfandel there. And I want to get on this podcast, we're going to talk about some of our favorite producers of Zinfandel and kind of what we think of the grape and, what we don't like and do like. But before that, I want to talk a little bit about the history and how your family ended up here. You can see this in verticals, but just, you being the fifth generation, being a woman, now taking over the winery, how do you start the story of your family, which includes bootleggers and arrests and all sorts of family fights? And I mean, how do we begin this?
Yeah, I mean, it's a long story and requires multiple bottles of Zinfandel to get through it. But the short version, basically, my great-great-grandparents, Giuseppe and Luisa, came over from Italy at 19 and 16 years old. So in the 1880s.
Whereabouts in Italy?
In the Tuscany region, so right outside Lucca. It's kind of a neighboring town that most people are more familiar with. And Giuseppe was actually a scientist and a winemaker in Italy, and he wanted to move to America and bring his young bride, Luisa, and her father in particular was not pleased at that idea. But she came anyway, and they landed in, Sonoma County, what is now considered Martinelli Road. At that time, it was just, a dirt road. It wasn't paved or didn't have a name. And he was working for a local farmer and was able to save up enough money to buy a small plot of land on Martinelli Road. And there was already a vineyard on the road at that time. And it's what we now call Jackass Vineyard. So we don't know the exact year that was planted. We know that it was early 1880s, and it's all 100% Zinfandel right there. And then he planted a vineyard right next to it, what is now referred to as Jackass Hill. So it's a 65 degree non-terrace slope. It's the steepest non-terrace vineyard in California. So, now
probably North America.
Yeah. And, we don't have hard data on that, but yes. Yeah, I think you're right.
All right, I have to jump in on two things. So when they came over, they would have had to go all the way around the bottom of South America, which is an incredibly dangerous thing to do at that time. Why California? Why did they go there? Why not go to Virginia? Why not go to Ohio?
I don't know. And why they didn't, end up on the East Coast first. But I know that once they got here, they saw the similarities of this area to Italy. So the weather, and I think the soil and all the different, varieties of crops that were growing well here, from apples, prunes, cherries, grapes. So, it kind of reminded them of home a little bit. And I think part of it also comes down to just how much money you have, how far you can go, whether this is where they ended up because it's kind of as far as they could get, or he got a job and they've got to start making money. So, Russian River Valley, that's where they ended up. And we've been here now, there's 6 generations. My kids are 6th generation, and we're all still here. So Zinfandel, kind of started our path here. There's already a Zinfandel vineyard there. He planted Zinfandel on what is now referred to as Jackass Hill.
Well, so Jackass Hill, again, I want people to understand, if you have to watch the Verticals episode, these vines are part of the reason I had to film this family. It wasn't just the history, but also this place. Jackass Hill has these vines that are gnarly and huge and old and beautiful and dry farmed, and they look like dinosaurs surrounded by younger dinosaurs. It's a wild thing to see this place, and it is really like you go up there and you are standing in some of the very first vines planted in California that are still here. They're still here. They're still incredible.
And they're still producing, off that 4-ish acre vineyard. We make about 100 cases of that Jackass Hill Zinfandel a year. And yeah, they're gnarly. I mean, they're really, really cool. They just look like old gnarly trees. And, my nano still farms it on this super special tractor because it's dangerous. I mean, it's not trellised. It's a little bit sketchy, and he has no intention of giving up that tractor seat anytime soon.
Yeah, there's almost no way on camera to show how steep it was. I mean, obviously we shot it from the air and things like that, but it is, honest to God, especially when you get a little lower on it, you have to slide down on your butt to and these vines are just gripping for sheer life for almost 150 years.
Yeah, wild. I mean, going down is almost scarier. You've kind of kind of have to, grab the roots to slide down. And we used to actually give pins to people that say, I hiked Jackass Hill when you got to the top, because it's such a feat to get up there with certain like distributors and, longtime members. We'd hike them up there, and it's extreme. It really is.
I rode up in your grandfather's old Army Jeep. It was like 1940s Army Jeep.
Yeah. Better. It is such an extreme walk. So yeah, better to hitch a ride if you can. And until, God, I want to say the 70s, they farmed it, behind a horse because it was just safer. So now there's this, his tractor that he does it on. And he always talks about how, he starts thinking about it in January and getting mentally prepared. He doesn't actually start disking the hill until early April. But for a few months, he starts thinking about it. And it's a big deal. So my grandmother, we always talk about, well, one day when he eventually retires, which we always joke that no one in my family actually retires as long as there's diesel in the tractor. But at some point, one of my uncles will have to start farming it. And my nanny has always said, nope, no way. So we don't know what's going to happen. But his father farmed it, my great nano, until he was 87. So he definitely has a few years left in him.
My Lord.
81. I know.
Something in that Zin.
Yes. Yeah, when you open it and taste it, it's worth it.
No, it really is. I mean, so you produce what? You said 100 cases? That's it?
Yeah.
So
like last year it was just 88 cases. This year I think we have about 105. So, of course it depends on the vintage, but yeah, it floats right around 100 cases. All
right. So since we're kind of at the present day with your family, and I can't overstate that you need to see the Verticals episode. It gets into their history with Prohibition and all the stuff you guys did, and it's just an incredible legacy. But
yeah,
when we talk about old vine Zinfandel, because you're only making 100 cases off of like what, 3-4 acres, 4 acres?
Yeah, it's about 4 acres. That specific vineyard, yeah.
So first of all, how do you make money on that? And then second of all, how does it taste different than new Zin vines? Why keep these 120-year-old vines? What's the point? I mean,
yeah, that's a great question.
Start with how is it profitable to keep this hill going? Is it just tradition, or does it actually make you money?
It is. Yeah, it's both. I mean, it's absolutely tradition. I would think that if we weren't breaking even and if it wasn't making money, we still wouldn't have the heart to rip those grapes out. I mean, you just can't. They have seen the Great Depression. They've been through World War I, World War II. I mean, all of it. Like, they've just seen so much history.
Prohibition. The fact that they survived Prohibition is wild.
Exactly.
They also survived when all the Zin grapes were being ripped out in the 80s, 70s, early 90s. But it's just been so part of our heritage. My nana was fortunate to inherit, he was a school teacher, and then he started inheriting a couple properties and decided to go into farming. He just had too much of a kind of sentimental connection with the land to sell it and maybe have an easier life at that point, to have the money instead of the land. But keeping it in the family is something that has been really, really important to, every generation in my family. And, the Zinfandel, that bottle specifically is $150 per bottle, and we make about 100 cases. So it is profitable on its own. If that was our only vineyard, maybe not. But, we have about 450 acres of grapes that we farm and that we own, and we sell a lot of that to other producers and then make wines under our label with about 12% of those grapes. So it's absolutely worth doing when you taste it. And then it's powerful. This wine is no joke.
Yeah, and we've taken cuttings from Jackass Hill and planted other Zinfandel vineyards since then. So that are, anywhere from 30 years old to closer to 50 years old. So Zinfandel, it's like our family heritage grape. We considered it part of our family. We are definitely known for Pinot Noir and Chardonnay as well. But Zinfandel has a special place in our hearts, especially for my grandparents. That's really how they got started in the wine business.
So the old vine situation, when you see that on labels, it's just thrown around. What does that actually mean? Is there actually like once it reaches 50 years old, you can call it old vine, or is that just marketing?
It is a marketing thing. So, if you're a producer and you have a vineyard that's 5 years old and a vineyard that's 8 years old, you can slap old vines in on your 8-year-old Zinfandel, and it is older than your other vineyard, but there's no like parameters around when and how you can call it that. So, it's interesting with California's history. It's like that is a legitimate term. We really do have a lot of old vine Zinfandel here, but all kinds of producers across the board are using that term on their label. But, 140-year-old Zinfandel is absolutely old vine Zin. And we don't use that on our label, but that is a fair descriptor, absolutely, because they are, some of the oldest Zinfandel or vineyards, period, in California.
Well, speaking of which, in the Verticals episode, we open up, a 1936?
36, yeah.
36 from Jackass Hill, or the vineyard surrounding it. And it's still, it's one of the most incredible experiences and also one of the better wines I've ever had in my life. It's wild.
That was such a special day, not just because we were part of it shooting with you guys, and it was such a kind of special and unique opportunity, but just to be down in the basement of my mom's house. My great grandfather built that house in the 1940s, I want to say, early 1940s, late 1930s, with his own hands, this, wine cellar underneath the house. And there's just all these old bottles of wine that no one's even really opened and touched for, decades and decades. And we opened a bottle in 1936, Zinfandel. It's an old sake bottle, doesn't have a label, of course. It's covered in dirt and rodent poop. And oh my gosh, we were blown away at how incredible that wine still tasted. That was just such a special day. And then for the next 3 days, we took it to the tasting room folks and our winemaking team and everybody we could to try sips, because it was like, it's just a once in a lifetime type of wine. It was just unbelievable.
But it also goes to show, too, how the ageability of Zinfandel. It's so funny. I see stuff. I won't call out names, but I see like wine writers and quote unquote influencers and whatever bullshit that is on Twitter and Instagram saying like, here's the ages you should age these different, types of wine.
Varietal. And doesn't that make you crazy, Zinfandel?
It makes me nuts.
Credit.
But they always put Zinfandel. It's like 10 years. And then it's and you're like, first of all, like that's where it starts to go downhill or something. And you're just like, I have had more of any grape, any variety in the world, any varietal. It has been Zinfandel that I have had ones that are over 50 years old that have been sound. I've had Bordeaux's and Pinots. I'm lucky because of the projects we make, the films we do, all this stuff that I get to taste a lot of wine. I'm not bragging. It's a weird part of my job.
No, it's great.
But because of that, I try all this old stuff. And so I've had, Clos de Val-Zins back to the, early 70s. And back when, everybody made a Zin and it had a little bit of it would never be 100% Zin because a lot of that stuff is all field blended, whatever this old stuff is. But it always has the structure to maintain the tannins, the sweetness, they're just so full. And for some reason, they have the cocktail that it takes to be alive in the end. As long as there's not terrible oxidation.
Yeah, I know. Zinfandel does not get enough credit. I think it's been tough after the white Zinfandel craze, which honestly we're thankful for because it kept Zinfandel on the ground here. But it got a bad rap then. And then there's, just like with all varietals, but there's so many different styles and ways to make Zinfandel, but done right, it is so incredible and it can age with the best of them. And we are here to spread the good word of Zinfandel. Yeah. And it's working, it's working. We make, I want to say 5 Zinfandels now, maybe 6 different Zins, mostly vineyard designate, and then one that's more of a appellation blend, 100% Zinfandel, but from a couple different vineyards. And it's just really fun to educate people. And they're always pleasantly surprised. Like, yeah, lay this down for 10, 20 years. If you have the capability, let it go longer. And we just always get such incredible feedback. So yeah, Zinfandel is very, very special to us.
Well, also too, I think, I guess a couple things that are my observations with Zin as a table wine. And one of them is that you often find it with very high alcohol. And I think a lot of that comes from the fact that the berries all ripen at different times. So you'll pull a bunch of Zin grapes and you'll see like little baby green ones and giant red ones that are totally fully veraised and turned color. And so because of that, it makes it easier to wait until they're all veraised. But that means some of the grapes are going to be really high in sugar.
Pruny, overripe.
Yeah, right, which gives you that kind of, that really, that ripe taste that Zinfandel is now known for. Mm-hmm. But, you don't have to make it that way. That's the other thing. It's like, you can also green harvest Zinfandel and you can get a very light, totally different type of a wine. And later on in our conversation, we're going to talk about some of our favorite producers. And one of them on this list makes a Zin that is, often below 13% alcohol, which blows my mind.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about these two styles, you guys tend to make a much fuller richer, big-bodied wine, which I think is hilarious, kind of like when all the big wine scores started coming out and everybody started saying, make your cabs big and do all this stuff and oak it and all this stuff. And it's kind of funny that Zinfandel had been doing that for a very long time. Like it's like Zin's your wine if you like that stuff. It's all about
showing that fruit. And you're absolutely right. The clusters on some of these Zinfandel vineyards are so big. They're, up to 3/4 of a pound each, and they absolutely ripen. Those berries on each cluster can ripen at different times. So rather than making, an overly ripe wine or one that's greener, we send our guys through with tweezers and we'll have them pull the green berries off while the fruit is still ripening. It is incredibly, it's incredibly labor intensive and, expensive, but we want to make the style of Zinfandel that, our grapes are there to do and to show what the vineyard can do. And Zinfandel is all about that fruit. So we pull out those green berries and then we have more control, right? To pick it when the whole cluster is ripe and ready.
Can you do me a favor for all these like hipster sommeliers who like insane acid water? Can you just take all those green berries and make like one case of wine that has like 4% alcohol just to give to these like insane hipsters?
Gosh, that sounds terrible. But yeah, there's a wine out there for everyone, and that's why.
Well, you know the wine I'm talking about, though. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. Tessa.
Yeah, no, thank you. We don't want our name on anything like that, but we could sell it if somebody else wants to do it. But yeah, that's it, right? Going through, there's lots and lots of passes that the guys make through the vineyard, and my uncles, when they're giving tours, always tell people, and it blows their minds, we'll send them through and have those little green berries pulled out so the whole cluster can ripen on time and how we want it to. So Zinfandel is amazing.
This is basically, you're insane. I just want you to know that.
I know. But then when people open a bottle of our Zinfandel, when they're like, oh my gosh, Zinfandel is so high, or this is 16%, or I don't drink much Zin because it doesn't age like a cab or whatever it is, and they open that, we are turning people into Zinfandel drinkers, and our tasting room team just loves that because they're just like, oh yeah, try this. And people are just amazed. They're like, oh, high alcohol, but you don't taste the alcohol. And it's like, well, then why does it matter what the number is on the bottle? You don't taste, it's not hot going down.
Well, because you wake up in the driveway the next morning, maybe?
Well, that's on you. That's not our problem.
You're right. Well, so I wake up in the driveway. It's fine. Yeah, I don't have that. But also too, the other thing, that high alcohol, I think, and I'm not alone in this, a lot of people who collect wine and deeply care about it know that alcohol does play a factor in aging. And so, you do find a wine that's high, 16, in some cases I've seen 17%, things like that. But if you do lay that down for 20, 30 years, which I know Americans don't think of as an option, but in Europe they do. They don't, There's not like you're not panicking that you've bought 5 cases of wine and you're like, I don't know when I'll drink it. In Europe, here, you're like, I have 5 cases of wine, I don't know what to do with it. So, but that alcohol, it mellows out even more. Once you get some 10, 20 years on a wine, it becomes this fully integrated type of a thing. And the alcohol and the fruit, and they, I don't know. That's the one surprising thing about a lot of the Zins I've had of yours is that there is acid in it. You still have the balance of the fruit, the alcohol, and the acid, and especially if you can put 10 years of that on that or more. So, So when you talk about the two styles of Zin, kind of the more fuller, richer thing, and then one that's pulled back a little bit, what food do you like to do with Zinfandel? Like is it just straight, like for you, pizza wine or barbecue, or what do you?
No, and Zinfandel, what's right for each person is different, but Zinfandel is versatile. We love to have Zinfandel with Mexican food also. It's not just like, okay, we're Italian, we eat lots of red sauce pastas, so we have our Zins with those. Like, that's not necessary. It doesn't even have to be spicy food. Zinfandel, there's even certain seafoods that work really well with Zinfandel.
Like what?
I love Zinfandel, some of our more elegant Zinfandels with even salmon, with the right spices on top. Shellfish. Really, it's like you can't pigeonhole it into just the spicy Italian pastas. Mexican food is really, really great with Zinfandel. Thai food even, the fruit and the acidity stands up to all sorts of different foods. And then it's also not, one of those wines where it's like, oh, it's the big reds, you have to have it with food. Like, have a glass of Zinfandel without food, and it's totally doable. It's incredible, actually. So Zinfandel has no limits in our family, and it's so fun educating people because it really does, surprise them and convert them into serious Zinfandel drinkers and collectors. Like you said, you can lay them down. It's not, we aren't making wines that you have to drink the next year or two. It's good to make stuff that's approachable, but also at the same time, they really do evolve and just, they lay down so beautifully.
Well, this is really true. And I think, one time I went out to we had Korean barbecue. There's a place in Los Angeles. There's a lot of great Korean places in Los Angeles. And we were given, I had a Turley Zin, but it was one of their bigger Zins. And it was phenomenal with Korean barbecue, and we had gotten it a little spicy. It held up to it. It was, I know it's a kind of a cliche to say Zinfandel goes well with barbecue, goes well with, anything with like tangy sauce but it does. I mean, the cliche does work.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah. And, I could see like, especially if you added the right stuff to like a ciappino, like a seafood soup or something, if you had like a red sauce base or that's interesting. I like it, but it is pizza wine too. It's good with pizza.
Yes. Yeah. That's why we love it. It's very versatile.
Good. Well, why don't we talk a little bit about who our favorite producers are and why? And I think the pressure's really on you as a family, like a dynasty in Zinfandel. Who are the ones besides you? Obviously, everybody listening should get a bottle of Martinelli Zin or 5 and wake up in the driveway. And
yes. Yeah, but we do have to put some effort into not creating, 100% house palate. And there are some really, really incredible producers also helping, share the story of Zinfandel and how incredible and versatile they are and that they can age. Yeah, so this will be fun. I have a couple on my list.
Yeah, why don't we go every other? Why don't you start? And then if we have somebody that's the same, we'll sort of talk about them together. But why don't you start?
Okay, cool. So one Zinfandel that is definitely a go-to that I love when we're not drinking our own wines is the label San Lorenzo. So it's actually Pete and Kathy Sagazio, formerly a part of the Sagazio winery and family, and they kept one of their really old homestead Zinfandel vineyards, I think up north of Healdsburg, and make two different Zinfandel labels under the San Lorenzo label. And, the Scazios have known Zinfandel. They have done Zinfandel for a long time. And I do believe that their vineyard is close to 100 years old also. But their San Lorenzo Zins are top notch, same where they're really, really showing the fruit, but they have great acidity and tannin structure. They are just so tasty. It's the Pearl, I think, is the one that I love the most. That's what it's called. So San Lorenzo, and it's small production. You're not going to see them out there everywhere, but, you can find them locally, I'm sure. And then, of course, on their website. But I love San Lorenzo Zinfandel. Are you familiar?
No, I just wrote it down. I wrote it down right now. Good. And I'm definitely going to get it. There's no question. So I have Frog's Leap Zin. And if you're familiar with Frog's Leap Vineyards, they are, they're this like beautiful combination of really intelligent hippies, where they care so much about the environment, everything's biodynamic and all that stuff, but they're really into dry farming. And John Williams makes a Zinfandel there that is so restrained and yet not for the sake of it. So you find that it's like 13% alcohol sometimes, 13 and a half.
Oh, wow.
But it drinks in a way that is, to me, it's a little bit more like a cooler climate Syrah in a way. It's very strange in the way that it's very fruit forward, but the alcohol's low. I just adore this stuff. And there's something about dry farming Zinfandel, and not irrigating it, where it has an ability to produce something that is way more of a place.
Yeah.
Than if
because those roots dig down without, being irrigated. The root system on those older Zinfandel vineyards as well goes so deep. It's just incredible. And I think that
have you guys ever pulled one of the old vines out after it died and just seen how big the root structure is?
I mean, I haven't personally. I'm sure that at some point my grandfather has, for whatever reason, had to pull one out or looked at it. But I mean, he has said that they're easily 15, 20 feet down into the earth. I mean, you just think about all the years and years of layers all through the soil that it's dug down and kind of everything that it pulls up from way down there, even just to hit the water table. And I think that has a lot to do with Zinfandel's style. Absolutely.
Yeah, there's no question about it. All right, well, who do you have next?
So another one that's a small producer that I like, I discovered just at a local restaurant, and now I visit to just grab some bottles, is Gamba, Gamba.
Yep,
they're
aware of them.
Small, family owned as well. You are good. And they're actually just up the road from us, and they have some old vineyards, and I think they do some other, cool big wines like Petit Syrah. But they have a handful of different Zinfandels and a couple that you can only get right there on the estate. And that's another one of our go-tos. Gamba, never let you down. Really, really tasty Zinfandels.
That's great. No, yeah. That's great. They're just that's a wonderful property. Good people. Yeah. Really good people.
Yeah,
I haven't had a lot of I have not had a lot of it though. That's something, this is why I wanted to do this with you. So I'm just writing in my notes what I should be drinking.
Yeah. I've only seen one or two of their wines kind of distributed. But of course, because we're local, they are in a lot of local restaurant lists. And then, we pop in there. I think it's appointment only. And then, they have a whole list of stuff, but, really small and family owned. And that's definitely one to keep on your list.
Yeah. Gamba. Yeah. That's great. Well, I mean, my next one is it's so obvious. It's crazy. I have Ridge on the list.
Yes.
I mean, Ridge, they're Light and Springs and all the Zins. I mean, I think that this winery is not just a pioneer in Zinfandel, but a pioneer in pretty much California wine. Absolutely. From a standpoint of quality. And there's no one there you don't want to hug. I mean, Eric Bauer and Paul Draper, and these are just wonderful, wonderful human beings from the top to the bottom.
Episode that you guys did on them.
Oh, the verticals on Ridge? Yeah, we did 2 parts on them.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I watched both of them. Really, really cool story.
Oh, one of the craziest things I ever had in my life, we opened up an 86, I think it was an 86, white Zinfandel from Ridge when they were trying to make it.
Oh, wow.
It's in one of the episodes, and it was stunning. But only Ridge could have done something like a rosé. Yeah. They made a real rosé that was ageable, that was not white Zin that you think of, in the grocery store and whatever else. But these guys, they believed in Zin forever, and they never gave up on it. And they have always produced a wine, that is balanced and good, and keeps getting more expensive. Unfortunately, I need to stop making stuff about them.
They are true pioneers, though.
Yeah, they're great. They're really great. I would imagine you run into Ridge often when you guys do tastings and such, right?
We do at events and different stuff like that. I don't drink their wines as often as I should, but I have been in their tasting room there in Linton Springs, and yeah, they're a really fun one to follow. And we definitely run into them.
My father-in-law had a 3-liter of their wine, and when I first started dating my now wife, he had this 3-liter that he had purchased, and he's like, I'm not going to open this up for 10 or 12 years or whatever. And I remember him opening it up at Christmas and me thinking, where did 12 years go? It was this weird moment where I sort of realized how fast time passes, because I saw this bottle get bought at a wine shop, and then I saw it get opened at Christmas for the whole entire family. Anyways, I just have great memories around Ridge, and I just adore all the people there.
That's so cool.
Ridge would be on my list. Who do you have for your third?
My last one, and again, classic Zinfandel producer that I know a lot of people were turned on to Zinfandel because of Turley in their wines.
Hard not to put Turley on this.
Yeah, even their Petit Syrahs, but we used to pass them when I'd go visit my own college town in San Luis Obispo, and that's somewhere we always stopped. And the people in the tasting room are always so, so friendly. And you just can't go wrong with a Turley Zin. They're approachable. And I think that for a lot of people who either for whatever reason were into Zinfandels, I just know a lot of folks that are like, oh yeah, Turley Zinfandel, that's what really got me, interested into the California Zinfandel scene. So they're a cool brand.
And Helen had something to do with your family, right? Didn't she consult with you guys or work a little bit with you?
So Turley, the label, is her brother, Larry. She actually, isn't involved with that winery, but Helen Turley was our winemaker from about 1993 until 2010. And she
very involved.
Yes. She kind of helped put us on the map. She really coached my grandfather with a lot of the vineyard plantings that he put in, and helped set, according to the fruit that we grew, helped set our house style. So she was on board till 2010. And then for a long time bought grapes from a couple of our vineyards to put under her own Marcusson label, which she doesn't have that fruit anymore. But yeah, Helen Turley is a big part of our history. at Martinelli Winery. Absolutely. But yeah, Turley Winery is her brother, Larry.
Yeah, I there's even some of the most, ardent hipster sommeliers still love Turley. Turley has this place for people that they that they really like. And they do all sorts of kinds of some very restrained stuff and also some bigger Zins. And they do a great job. Have you ever had their white Zin?
No.
You need to try it. It is so surprisingly I'm surprised they even call it that.
Huh.
They might not. I wonder if they call it rosé. But it's quite good. I had a glass of it with Raj Parr. I don't know if you know who he is. So Raj poured it for me, and I was like, "You're pouring me Turley Zin?" And he goes, "No, try this," and it was really good.
Very cool. Oh yeah, I'll keep an eye out for it.
My last one is Lagère Meredith. Are you familiar with Carol Meredith?
I don't know her personally, but I learned all about her on one of your episodes.
Oh yeah. She's Carol's kind of one of those people, like if they were like, you get to sit at a table with 15 people in heaven, right? To have dinner. I'd be like, Carol, can you come sit at my table? And she'd probably be busy photographing birds or something. But
yeah, I do. I know a lot about her, but I've never met her in person.
She's a genius. That word gets thrown around a lot, but she really is. And she's a sweetheart and a good friend of my family now at this point. And
very cool.
I met her in the second film, but she also is a grape geneticist who was at UC Davis, and she's the one who traced the lineage of Zinfandel back through Italy, back through all the other places, and to Croatia. And so she makes a Zin at the top of Mount Veeder. Of course, she calls it Tribodrag because, in her opinion, it's not Zinfandel, it's Tribodrag.
Yeah, totally. That's fair.
And but hers is absolutely excellent. It's delicious, and I'm going to order a bottle of her Zin to send to you when we get off the phone.
I would love to taste it.
Oh yeah. No, you have to. I'll put you up on Carol's Tribodrag, but it's a delicious wine.
Oh, very cool.
It's, and they do everything themselves. You have this husband and wife up at the top of a mountain who, I can't believe they haven't killed each other yet, but they make an unbelievable wine, and all their wines are good. But it's that kind of stuff, like the story, the husband, wife, the family, that's what makes you guys so great too. I mean, that's why
thank you.
I will never be able to drink your wine objectively again. I can't just go, what do you think of the wine? I can't. I think of,
the whole picture, the whole story. I know.
I think of your hunting grandpa and and I think of your mom, and I mean, in the episode, she makes salad with vinegar that's like 100 years old from wine. And it's, it's just good stuff. And I think having a conversation with somebody like you lets me, and I hope the audience, realize that the wine world is real people, not just
hope so too.
Companies,
Yeah. I mean, it's becoming more and more special and unique to have a family-owned winery, that ever has been for whatever reason. And everybody has their reasons that either there's no generation to pass it on to, or that next generation isn't interested, or financial reasons. There's all the reasons that people sell, and that's happening more and more. And I get that, that works for certain people's stories. And for us, we feel so privileged that we've been successful at it and able to keep it in the family, and that the next generation, at least one or two of them, is always very interested to learn and eventually take on the reins. And it is so special and so unique. And, we get that. It took me a long time until I was fully adult to really understand what we had and how unique and how special it was. And we're just so, lucky that there were people who fought the good fight, and through all those super hard times throughout history, were able to keep, these vineyards in the family, even when there was, no money and no support and all the craziness going on, prohibition and doing things, whether it was legal or not, to keep those vineyards in
spoiler alert,
production.
It wasn't legal.
I know my nano, even to this day, is like, shh, don't tell anybody about that. I'm like,
that's one of my favorite parts.
Come after us in 2021 for telling people that we were making wine during prohibition and selling it without them.
I think the statute of limitations is over at this point.
It's pretty cute. He's still just
he's like that in the episode.
Tell anyone.
I had to I cornered him up at the top of the vineyard, and I'm like, listen, you got to tell this story. And he's very uneasy about it.
Yeah. Oh, it's so funny. He's so funny about it. But yeah, it's been a long history, but here we are, and we're super grateful, and we just love sharing it with people, our wines and the story. We just love that more than anything. So,
well, it's good. I mean, I hope this episode brings, more people to try it and more people to understand your story. And I hope it makes you more famous than your brother, who's an actor.
God, the competition competition is fierce. I know. After this, I'm going to say I'm on a podcast, so now you're not the only, star.
Yeah, I'm on a podcast. Yeah, woo, you made
He's
it.
He's going to laugh.
Yeah. He, just for point of reference, her brother is, he's on Mindhunter on Netflix. He's on all sorts of stuff. Anyway, it's just a reference.
Yeah, he's done a handful of things now. He lives in LA with his little family. And I know he is, one example of the next generation being like, no, I don't want anything to do with making wine or growing it. I'm going to go out and be on the big screen. And we're like, oh my gosh. And now he's like, yeah, I mean, I guess made it.
Worked.
It's so surreal that I'm like, I don't even know. You're just like a celebrity to other people, but you're just my little brother.
Yeah. Well, the funny part is that if I was to name the two most reckless professions you could possibly go into, I think I'd put acting and winemaking at the top of the list. So, pick one. It's
It's so true. And very few are able to be successful and retire in those jobs. It's definitely not, it didn't come to fruition as a hobby for us. It was definitely, for my grandfather and the generations before that, how you paid for your kids to play soccer and how they put food on the table. And it was, there were tough times, especially here in Sonoma County when, we started out with a lot more apple orchards than we had vineyards, and the apple market just really, really turned south. And then it's like, what do you do? We had 80-year-old apple orchards at that time. Do you, rip those out? Do you suffer through? And, a lot of those have been converted to vineyards. So economically, it was just a decision that, they had to make. And here we are today.
Yeah. Well, we should also say that's a good segue that you are not the Martinelli cider family.
Correct.
That is a
totally
Italian,
different.
Swiss family or something?
They're out of Watsonville area. They're Swiss Italian. We're Italian. And we get that a lot, right? But we always tell people that
you guys have a horrible feud. I think you guys have been killing each other for years.
Yeah, totally. They actually give us free apple cider. They're so nice. They're really nice people. But we always tell people who stop in the tasting room, like, oh, I have my kids with me. Where's your sparkling cider? And we're like, no, we only make the good beverage with alcohol in it. So different family,
well,
totally.
You should make hard cider. I would like to see that happen. I know we got to wrap up the pod here, but I would like to see you do that.
Project.
Cider. I have a prediction, and I would say, buy cider. It's going to go big.
Yeah, I know it really is.
Also, don't listen to me. I'm a terrible businessman. All right. Well, this is a huge pleasure, and I cannot wait for people to go to Som TV and watch your episode.
Yes, we're excited too. We feel so honored. Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're the best.
It's been so fun.
I look forward to waking up in your driveway.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Absolutely. I'll provide the vino.
All right, good.
All right.
All right, that's it. Talk soon.
Thanks, you guys. Take care.
Thank you, everybody, so much for listening. I hope you're now inspired to go buy a bottle of Zin and get drunk and wake up in the driveway. Hope all of you are very safe and can't wait to see you all again once we're all vaccinated. All right, be safe, somtv.com.